Karoline Leavitt. The left pretends to be a champion of women until they find one who is a conservative.
Karoline Leavitt. When it comes to women, the left loves to claim they're all about empowerment. Until a conservative woman steps into the spotlight. That's when the gloves come off and the attacks get as petty as they are ridiculous. And once again, Whoopi Goldberg is caught in the middle of controversy, this time for her latest defense of wokeness. But she wasn't ready for what came next. Karoline Leavitt, a bold and unapologetic conservative voice, didn't hold back. She went straight for the contradictions in Whoopi's argument, exposing The View's hypocrisy on wokeness, calling out their selective support for women and their one-sided narrative.
Once that happens, they love nothing more than tearing down women with the most petty and vacuous of insults.
What started as a routine discussion spiraled into a fiery showdown. Levit didn't just stand her ground, she flipped the script, putting Whoopi and The View's panel on the defensive. With sharp arguments and undeniable facts, she forced them to confront the glaring contradictions in their own stance. This wasn't just another debate, it was one of the most explosive clashes on live TV in recent memory. And today, we're diving into exactly what went down, why it's sparking so much outrage, and what it reveals about the deepening cultural divide.
Maybe have been open to her.
No, I understand. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
And the abuse continued.
I would like this young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason.
Attacking a woman for her looks or age isn't very progressive.
Things got heated on The View when the topic of wokeness took center stage. Whoopi Goldberg came out swinging, fiercely defending the movement. To her, wokeness isn't just important, it's essential for progress. She claimed it's been the driving force behind the push for diversity, equity, and inclusion, finally giving marginalized communities the recognition and opportunities they've long been denied. And as for the critics, Whoopi didn't hold back. She insisted they weren't opposing wokeness for any legitimate reason. They were simply afraid of change, afraid of progress, and most of all, afraid of losing the privilege they've held onto for so long. Whoopi wasn't having any of it. She brushed off conservative criticisms of wokeness, calling them nothing more than fear-mongering tactics meant to divide rather than spark real discussion. In her eyes, the opposition isn't pushing back against wokeness because it's extreme. They're twisting its meaning to make it seem radical when, according to her, it's really about fairness and justice. She doubled down, insisting that without wokeness, major civil rights victories wouldn't have happened. And those who challenge it, she claimed they aren't fighting for free thought. They're just uncomfortable with the power shift happening right before their eyes.
Just say a strong message who are out there pretending to be outraged about the long list of crap that this administration is cutting, federal waste and funding, like $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, $20 million on a new Sesame Street show in Iraq, $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. I could go on, and I'm happy to provide this list to every single one of you.
But Whoopi didn't get the last word. Karoline Leavitt jumped in, and she wasn't about to let that narrative slide. Instead of just disagreeing, she tore into the very core of Whoopi's argument, breaking it down piece by piece. With sharp precision, she exposed the contradictions in The View's portrayal of wokeness, questioning whether this so-called movement for inclusivity was really as noble and beneficial as its supporters made it out to be, or if it was just another tool for ideological control. Leavitt didn't deny that wokeness may have started with good intentions. Fighting discrimination, promoting equality, those were noble goals. But according to her, that's not what wokeness is today. She argued that it has transformed into something far more dangerous, an ideological weapon used to silence anyone who dares to think differently.
And I'm so sick and tired of the media pointing the finger at Donald Trump and saying that he is sowing division in this country. He is not. The media is for pushing hoaxes like the one that you all pushed today, and the Democrat Party is for pushing lies about him. But the good news is Americans don't buy it. The sentiment that President Trump is a democracy. And if you're a deranged lunatic and you're mentally ill, you will believe that lie, and yes, you will take political.
Instead of bringing people together, Levit claimed wokeness now thrives on fear, forcing people into compliance through shame and intimidation. It no longer encourages open-mindedness, it demands blind obedience, punishing anyone bold enough to challenge its ever-changing rules. Levit didn't just make bold claims, she backed them up with real examples. She pointed to countless individuals who had faced serious consequences simply for voicing opinions that didn't align with the prevailing woke agenda. Journalists had their careers destroyed over a single tweet. Professors were shunned for daring to introduce alternative perspectives in their own classrooms.
While I vow to provide the truth from this podium, we ask that all of you in this room hold yourselves to that same standard. We know for a fact there have been lies that have been pushed by many legacy media outlets in this country about this president, about his family, and we will not accept that. We will call you out when we feel that you're...
According to Levit, wokeness had created an environment where free thought wasn't just discouraged, it was actively punished. And the worst part? She exposed how corporations, universities, and media giants weren't embracing wokeness out of genuine belief. No, they were bending the knee out of sheer fear, afraid of the relentless backlash from a loud minority demanding absolute ideological conformity. Levit wasn't finished. She set her sights directly on The View's panel, exposing what she called blatant hypocrisy. She didn't hold back, calling out Whoopi and her co-hosts for preaching about diversity and inclusivity while making a habit of silencing conservative voices. According to Levit, the so-called open discussions on The View were anything but. Conservative women were routinely cut off mid-sentence, mocked, or completely dismissed the moment their views didn't fit the show's left-leaning agenda. And then came the challenge. If The View really believes in diversity, Levit fired back, then why is it that diversity never seems to include conservative or even moderately right-leaning opinions? Why is it that the moment someone questions wokeness, they're immediately labeled as bigoted or regressive instead of being given the chance to explain themselves? She pulled receipts, pointing to past episodes where conservative guests had been interrupted, ridiculed, or talked over, proving that the show's version of inclusivity only seemed to apply to those who fell in line with a specific ideology. If wokeness was really about fairness, Levit argued, then it should welcome all perspectives, even the ones that challenge it. But instead, it had become a tool to suppress anyone who dared to question it.
Yeah. I would like this young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you, because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
As the debate escalated, the tension in the studio was impossible to ignore. Whoopi, visibly irritated by Levit's relentless pushback, tried to cut in, insisting that criticism of wokeness was nothing more than an excuse to resist change. But Levit wasn't about to let that slide. She fired back, making it clear that real progress doesn't come from shutting people down. It comes from open debate, where all voices, even the uncomfortable ones, get a seat at the table. And by the time the exchange reached its boiling point, it was clear. This debate had hit a nerve. The audience was divided. Some erupted in applause for Whoopi's passionate defense of wokeness, while others nodded in agreement with Levit's stark warning about its dangers. No matter where one stood, one fact was undeniable. Wokeness is no longer just a buzzword. It's one of the most explosive and divisive issues in modern American politics. Levit didn't stop there. She drove her point home, exposing how wokeness had been twisted into a tool not for inclusivity, but for censorship and exclusion, silencing voices that didn't fit the narrative, all while pretending to stand for fairness. Whoopi, visibly frustrated, attempted to defend her stance by arguing that wokeness was about inclusivity and ensuring equal opportunities for all. She claimed that conservatives like Levit were misrepresenting wokeness, portraying it as something oppressive when in reality, it was about righting historical wrongs and bringing fairness into the system. But Levitt wasn't about to let that go unchallenged.
Whoopi Goldberg chimed in too, suggesting Leavitt only got her job because of wokeness.
She doubled down, asking Whoopi how attacking conservative women for their beliefs fit into the idea of inclusivity. If wokeness was truly about embracing diverse perspectives, why were conservative women so often the targets of mockery and disdain? Why were their credentials questioned, while progressive women were automatically championed as role models? Levit highlighted how the selective application of wokeness created an unfair standard where only certain voices were elevated while others were silenced. At this point, the tension on set was palpable. Whoopi, struggling to maintain control of the conversation, attempted to pivot the discussion away from the criticisms Levitt raised. But it was too late. The damage had been done, and the audience could see the cracks in The View's argument. Levitt had made her point loud and clear, and Whoopi's attempts to shift the narrative only underscored the flaws in her position.
Say it's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular with the American people, and that's exactly what this administration is doing. It's correcting the lies and the wrongs of the past 4 years, many of the lies that have been told to your faces in this very briefing room.
The moment exploded online. Clips of the fiery exchange spread like wildfire across social media, igniting debates on both sides of the political spectrum. Viewers from all backgrounds chimed in, and surprisingly, even some who didn't fully align with Levitt's conservative stance admitted she had exposed serious flaws in The View's messaging. Many agreed. Whoopi's defense of wokeness had been torn apart piece by piece. Critics wasted no time calling out The View, arguing that the show had long been a platform for pushing one-sided narratives while shutting down dissenting opinions. And this latest showdown only reinforced that perception. Instead of fostering a real discussion, Whoopi and her co-hosts had tried to brush off Levitt's concerns without actually addressing them, putting their unwillingness to engage in genuine debate on full display.
Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
And then came the backlash. Swift, intense, and impossible to ignore. Many called on The View to reevaluate how it treats guests with differing opinions, accusing the show of creating an echo chamber instead of an open forum. But this wasn't just about one fiery debate. It was a reflection of a much larger cultural shift. Wokeness, once seen as a force for positive change, had morphed into something far more polarizing. Instead of encouraging meaningful conversations, it had created a climate where disagreement was met with hostility, where people were afraid to speak their minds for fear of being labeled intolerant or worse. Levitt's clash with Whoopi wasn't just another viral TV moment, it tapped into a deep frustration growing across the country. More and more Americans feel that the definition of progress has been hijacked, twisted into a demand for absolute ideological conformity. The backlash against The View wasn't just about Whoopi's words, it was about the bigger debate unfolding nationwide. Free speech, inclusivity, and the real meaning of diversity were all on the table. And at the heart of it all, one question remained. Do media outlets have a responsibility to encourage open discussions, or are they more interested in reinforcing their version of the truth?
I would like to point out to each and every one of you that in 2024, when Joe Biden was in the Oval Office, or upstairs in the residence sleeping, I'm not so sure, egg prices increased 65% in this country.
At the end of the day, Karoline Leavitt's appearance on The View didn't just expose the flaws in Whoopi Goldberg's defense of wokeness. It sparked a larger conversation about the state of political discourse in America.